Today we're going to talk about the architecture of the developer experience, where product, platform, and operations meet. But before introducing our four panelists, I would like just to give a couple of housekeeping rules, a bit of background information. We are scheduled to go for about 60 minutes. We'll begin with a discussion between our panelists, but feel free to ask questions at any time. You have the chance to ask questions in the chat, and I'll make sure to bring them to our panelists. So don't be shy, don't wait the last minute. Any question you have, feel free to write them in the chat. And finally, I would like to thank our sponsor for today, Harness. So today, we are going to talk about platform architecture. Platform architecture don't exist in a vacuum. They must support collaboration across product, operation, and the teams that build them. But as practitioners, how can system, platform, and processes be designed to reduce cognitive load, enable automation, and accelerate delivery across distributed systems? Well, my name is Renato Losio. I'm a cloud architect. I'm an editor here at InfoQ, and today I'm going to be joined by four experts coming from very different backgrounds, different companies, different continents, and they will discuss approach for designing according to best practices. And well, I don't want to take any more time from them. So very first chance for each one of them to introduce themselves. I will start with Martin. Martin, maybe you want to give a few words about yourself and what do you bring to the table?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Martin Reynolds. I'm currently field CTO at Harness, but I come from a background of, and I hate saying this, more than 30 years as a hands-on engineering leader and platform engineering, working across multiple industries, sectors, languages, clouds. So bringing a fairly broad breadth of experience.
Thank you so much, Martin. Ron, do you want to be the next one?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Ron Eisenberg. I'm a principal software architect at Cyborg at the Platform Engineering Division. I'm an AWS Serverless hero. I'm a serverless and platform engineering consultant. And I started to practice platform engineering here at Cyborg about 6 years ago. We started with 15 people. Now we're over 100 people, and we cater to the needs of over 1,000 developers, and we build a serverless platform.
Thank you so much, Ron. So someone else from Germany, Munich, I think. Stefan?
Hello, my name is Stefan Di Cesare. So I work for the DKB, who are a German online bank. And I work there as a platform engineer in the experience team for our digital platform. And so I'm focusing on being the interface between the platform and different kind of users, so developers and others. And I have background in the past at companies like Accenture and VMware.
Thank you so much. And the last panelist for today is Garima, I think from Canada, correct?
Yeah. Thank you, Renato. I'm Garima Bajpai, based out of Ottawa, Canada. I'm the founder for the DevOps community of practice here, which has several chapters. Our recent Hall of Fame shows that we have done several hackathons. DevOps for GenAI hackathon is the recent one. And talking about myself, I'm also the chair for the ambassador community at the Continuous Delivery Foundation. I have written several books, CI/CD design patterns, strategizing continuous delivery in cloud. And my call to action is communities and leadership practices. I bring on the table 22 years of R&D experience. I have a section which primarily works with research and development in telecommunication. So we can talk a little bit more on diverse platforms and niche platforms in that space. And I'm happy to be part of this webinar.
Thank you so much, Garima. Let's set, first of all, a bit of background information and kind of where do we start? So I don't know, when do you hear developer experience? What does that really mean to you in practice? I don't know who wants to go first. Ron, maybe?
Sure. So When you think about developer experience, from my perspective, it's about thinking my customers, and that's my internal developers, the developers that I work with. And basically, it means that when I develop a new service or a library or an SDK or an animation, I need to involve them as much as possible in the process to get their feedback from the design stages and then in the implementation stages. And I basically think about how they're going to use this product from their perspective. So I'm thinking about usability. And then I'm thinking about documentation, how easy it is to understand what's going on there. Going forward with maintainability, release notes, and things like that. So these are the things that come to my mind when I think about developer experience.
Thank you so much, Ran. Anyone has anything else that wants to add? Martin?
Sure. I mean, I would echo a lot of that. I mean, for me, I would say that developer experience really just means kind of making it effortless for engineers to build, test, ship, and remove as much friction as possible. But I would always do that. And I think this echoes what Ram was saying. And I'm going to use one of our internal values, which is, do that, but remember the human, remember the person that's actually consuming those things at the other end. So you can't do one in isolation without the other.
And it's needless to say that, where we started this concept from, right? I mean, history reminds us that once the complexity of your development ecosystem is increasing, it's essential to streamline the workflows, streamline documentation, bring standardization and governance. And this is part of, how this movement got started, right? So for me, I think it's extremely important to be people-centric. And as Ran mentioned, that your customers are your developers, right? So don't forget where you started from and what is the problem you're solving for them.
Thank you so much, very much. Stefan, do you have
Yes.
any?
I basically agree with what everybody else said, but I have one comment. When the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear developer experience is it's don't forget the others, because I see in the platform that the one kind of users are the developers, but we are also working with finance team, with security, with auditors, because we're a bank. And I think it's important to have in mind as well what these users, where the platform can bring value for these users, because it's sometimes completely different to what developers need, and they are. It's important for us that they are happy as well.
Thank you so much. I wanted actually to ask, where do you see the most significant friction point between, I don't know, product, platform, and operation teams? But now I start to think that maybe that number of teams is even wider. But let's start with the core one. Let's start with product, platform, and operation. I don't know, Martin, do you see any friction point, or where do you see most of the friction
I
points?
mean, we see it, and I've seen it as well. You get kind of, you tend to get a lot of friction when there's, teams are using different tools, or the tools are very siloed by the teams that they're working with. I think also anything that has, too many manual approval stages in, also causes friction, because it's that kind of like, I can't get it out. And product teams very much often just want to get those features out the door as fast as possible. And developers are then trying to get it through the process, and it just kind of slows down those release cycles. And I think the larger your scale and the bigger those inconsistencies tend to get, so if you have inconsistent delivery mechanisms, inconsistent deployment architectures, and I know there's no perfect world where you have, an organization says, hey, we only deploy one way. And that's how we do it. If you're thinking of those like golden paths to production or secure landing zones or whatever you want to call them, there's no one way, but generally there is a subset that works for most people. And I know we have some questions later about how flexible that should be too. So, but I think that friction really comes from wanting to get something out, and then the processes that you need to do to actually get something in front of the business's customer. And there's, often there's a desire for that to be quick, and there's lots of things that get in the way.
Thank you, Martin. I see Ran nodded a lot. I don't know if you want to
Yeah.
add something.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that even if you have a golden path, which we do, it's really easy to, I don't know, stray from the golden path or have the architect say, I mean, the bigger you are, it's easier to get. So people stray from the golden path, or from the beginning, you have different teams, you have different tech stacks, because the platform didn't arrive in a vacuum in many cases. So you have other tech stacks, some Kubernetes, some serverless, some Java, some C++. So, and then everybody wants something from the platform. So we become kind of a bottleneck, because we have a product manager, we manage our platform as a product, we have our priorities, and we need to make everybody's happy. And at some point, many people will not be so happy because we can't really get to what they want. So this is a very large friction as well.
Thank you, Ran. Thinking about the golden path, actually, Martin made me think as well, when you think about different company, one company doesn't usually have just one way. And actually, one thing that I tend to forget when I go to conferences, as well, QCon or other conferences, that you hear practitioners on stage explaining how they do things. And I tend to immediately associate that that's the way they do it, but often it's just how one team, that's what they presented, and often the best part of what they're presenting. And the attrition point are usually coming from the part that is coming from other team, other processes, and all the rest that is still there. That's a very, very good point. I don't know if, Stefan, do you see the same kind of challenges in your scenario, in your kind of more regulated industry, or?
Yeah, I think that the friction very often has to do with information and communication. Is to very often it boils down to it wasn't completely clear what the agreement between the user and the platform wasn't very clear about what the platform is actually supposed to do. Or the communication channels were not clear. And I think it's really important, especially when you're a platform team that starts from an engineering background, to not only have something that works, but also be able to explain well in which conditions does it work, which capabilities do we actually deliver, in which way, what do you need to use it? Because I think very often the friction points are related to that.
Thank you so much. Before asking Rema what she thinks, I actually want to ask our audience if you have any friction point or anything that you want to share with the panelists, or you want to ask their opinion. Please don't be shy. Put the question in the chat and we'll bring them live. Thanks so much. Rema, I saw you wanted to add something. Sorry.
I echo all the points which have been mentioned by Martin, Stefan, and Ran. And I think the biggest friction point or pain point is that, don't lose sight of user needs. Don't think about, building a world-class innovative platform without understanding where the inefficiencies are, what kind of workflows you can automate for developer productivity, right? And then also think about cross-functional ecosystem and things like security, compliance, and those kind of emerging technology integration gaps. I think these are things which we would be expecting from the platform, and it depends on business unit to business unit, team to team, right? So what we are also seeing, I mean, I drive a large ecosystem of developers through communities. What we see is that ownership and accountability also becomes a challenge in this domain, because whether you should streamline your workflows in a centralized way, or you have autonomy to decentralize some of the functions and some responsibilities, those are the kind of things every organization has to look at their own culture, workflows, needs, as well as adaptation, and then decide for their own in their own way that how they want to go about this kind of a challenge, right?
Thank you, Garima. Actually, Ran, I think you mentioned before of how much your team grew in the last few years or whatever. And I was wondering if what's this been that, almost if a growing team, what's the thing that slows down your team the most? Is it more a technical thing or something else, or just the fact that it's growing? Or Anything to share?
I think, well, I think growing the team has had its challenges because, well, even inside the team where you have best practices for how you write documentation, we use GitHub Pages, for example, or how you do release notes, or how do you even make a design, how do you get feedback, how to communicate whatever you build, then you need to scale that and you need to share all the knowledge that you have. For example, we're using a serverless tech stack with Python. So every new member that you onboard needs to know all the best practices and how to design things. So that's really slows down. I mean, this is part of the regular onboarding, but I think the thing that really slows us down is the fact that there are many golden paths. Like there are many variations of requirements. So again, serverless and Python is what we started, but then we started as the more we started to integrate with other teams and add more teams to the platform, we realized that we need to make some adjustments. We need to support other things that we didn't think of, because it's really hard to get, when you start and learn something like serverless and Python, it's really hard to think about everything. Like, how do I support Kubernetes? How do I support people with Java? How do I support other needs of services that I'm not really communicating with every day? Because the adoption takes time, even for the platform. You start with one service, two services, and you grow and grow. Then you get more needs, you grow your team. So it's a whole cycle.
Thank you, Ron. Actually, I see a very interesting question from the audience is for platform operation team, how should they balance between core operation like release versus new innovation in platform engineering? Well, as in every team, any technology we use, there's always kind of a balance to find. I see Martin nodding. I don't know. Do you want to go first, Martin? Do you want to try to address that?
I have multiple views on that, and so it's kind of a nuanced answer, I would say, just because I think you know, a lot of those core operations those are the kind of things that I would expect to be as fully automated as possible, if that makes sense. So they shouldn't take it shouldn't take people to do releases. It should be a process that's automated and can just happen. I know that can't happen 100% all the time, but as much as you can do that, that really kind of simplifies and frees up that flow. And I think on the other side of that platform engineering side, I think and I know it's already been mentioned, you treat developer experience and you treat platform as a product. You should absolutely have a roadmap that you're sharing with your customers, and you should be validating that roadmap and understand the priorities of what needs to come in that roadmap, so that you're actually planning your resources based on, okay, this is what I need to support my golden pipelines, my test automation, my security scanning. This is the effort that I require to do that. This is how much extra I have, and this is what I can deliver in that innovation space in that time, just like you would with any other product. I'm talking about this now exactly the same way I talked about, when I was delivering education products or when I was delivering finance products. It's the same thing. There is always a core level of support that you have to reserve resource for, and then based on the rest of your capacity, plan out what you can deliver based on what's going to best serve the community and the business.
Thank you, Martin. Garima, do you want to add anything? I saw you.
Yes, I think this is value versus velocity, right? I mean, you have to understand where you are in your journey with platform engineering and what your users need. For example, I'll quote this report from Harness, which was, I think I read it a few weeks back, which states about the AI paradox, right? So what happens is that, in today's times, we have like a lot of AI generated code and documentation. But now where the platforms could help us, right? So the platforms could help us in removing the bottleneck for testing, deployment, security. And that is where most of the delays and risks are associated, right? So we will have to understand, what kind of innovation could help us with the developer journey, which is taking place side by side.
Thank you, Emma. I see that our audience is actually stealing one of my favorite questions that I was planning to ask you. Actually, I was planning to ask you if you had to pick just one metric to measure success, which one will pick. But yeah, I think asking as well, I would like to know the first few metrics is fine as well. I don't know, Stefan, if you have any metrics that you recommend to measure success of a platform engineering project?
I think my first reaction would be it should be first clear to you what are the outcomes you want to reach. So where do you think that the platform should benefit? And I think that's part of the product management part, to understand where do you think we will have the best value, and to focus on that in the metric. And I think in general for platforms, the customer satisfaction is a good way to have an overall view of is it going well or not. But then I think it's important to look at what are the more specific outcomes you're looking for, especially in the shorter term, and try to look how can I measure this specific outcome.
Thank you. Ran, do you have any metric that you actually use or you recommend using?
So I think it's a very specific, maybe an advanced metric. So one of the projects that we're very proud of is that we're able to basically automate the time to create a new service, a hello world enterprise grade, production grade serverless service that is already out of the box connected to our SaaS control plane and has all the best practices and SDKs that we advocate here in the platform. And for me, a success metric would be how much time would it take for a developer to use successfully our automation, our self-service automation from the developer portal. And it would be the time and success rate, because we estimated this by running this automation, which takes about 3 hours. We're able to reduce the effort from 25 weeks for creating everything, basically what we have, into 3 hours. So if they're able to reproduce this automation and create services, which is something that teams do a lot of, many of the times, new microservices, new services, if the success rate and the time is very good, then for us that's a success, because that basically means we save money to the company.
Thank you, Ran. Martin, do you have any favorite metric you're using?
I mean, if I was boiling it down to, I'm going to kind of give two answers, but if I was boiling it down to the simplest thing, I would probably go, and I think this is what Ran was really saying as well, which was that kind of really that lead time for change. If you're just picking one metric, because that kind of encapsulates kind of, you know, the velocity and the improvement in speed of delivery. And I would probably pair that with developer satisfaction, just to give you a more full insight. However, I would also say, you know, if you want investment in developer experience from your leadership, from your management, you have to speak in a language that aligns with what their goals are. So you know, you might want to pick a metric that aligns with what they're trying to do, if you see what I mean, and what's a priority to them, you know. And sometimes that isn't necessarily the same as what, you know, it might not be lead time to change for them. It might actually be reduction in cost. It might be, you know, and being able to map those two things together, saying actually, by making things faster and more efficient, we're actually getting better value out of our engineers because they're able to spend more time doing the thing you pay them for, right? So, you know, there's a piece there where I'm saying those are the ones I mentioned at the start. They're like my go-to, but equally, like if you're talking to management, you need to talk the language that they understand, and you know, that's what gets you the investment to keep delivering and keep improving.
Thank you so much, Martin. I see Stefan has raised his hand.
Oh,
you're muted.
Yeah, sorry for that. Yeah. When I hear about cost reduction, I think it's one way to express it that can be more useful for platform teams is cost avoidance. How much do you manage to avoid? Which cost do you manage to avoid? Because I think for an operation team, it's often a good way to show value as well. Is that we've done that and it avoided that people will run into that problem, which would be very expensive.
That's a very interesting way to define it. Thank you. I don't know, Garima, do you want to take we have another question from the audience. I don't know if you have any feedback on that one. I don't know if you saw it.
Can you share the question?
Yeah, sure. What are your thoughts on making self-service kind of functionality for devs or training them to be more platform aware and reduce dependency on platform team?
So it's a very interesting question, and I'll answer it with a perspective or from a broader perspective. I think from platform engineering, you should look at like the platform engineering existence is because we have a lack of like quality of processes. When we started with a lot of developer tools and capabilities, the tool stack was fragmented, and there was a lot of cognitive load on the practitioners to bring these tools in the ecosystem in a good way, right? So there was lack of standardization or governance. Now when you talk about self-service, what it offers to the developers is a centralized interface where the developers can access tools. There is a software catalog. You can also associate the environment and infrastructure and the services around it, right? So it practically enhances the developer experience. Even the tools which you have in the platform space, they can also be integrated into, let's say, secure logging system, performance monitoring, and alerting. So it also creates a lot of visibility for the developers and troubleshooting capabilities. So it is definitely kind of an asset for the developer ecosystem. For at least from where I sit with hundreds of thousands of developers developing research and development capabilities for telecom ecosystem, for example. So I've seen that these self-service portals do affect the productivity of the developers and reduce the cognitive load on the practitioners. I mean, you can also think about if you are working with like many product teams, and if you have specialized needs for these product teams, how self-service portals could help you, right? I mean, templating, configuration, and also streamlining your workflows. I mean, on a click of a button, if you can access those tools and applications, that's great. I mean, this is like the developer wants to develop applications and do not care a lot about what goes in the background, right? So the platform engineering team is helping them build that kind of perspective. I'm sure that all the other panelists agree with the experience I have, but I mean, I'm open if Martin, Stefan, and Ron, you have to add something to what I said.
Martin, I don't know if you saw as well the next question on, I think it's kind of a follow-up in some sense. Gary mentioned as well internal developer portal, and I was wondering and actually there's a question say, at what point in platform engineering journey an internal developer portal as a self-service should be thought of?
That's an interesting one, because I think there's two things with that, because I think it's kind of providing a front-facing way for engineers to access their information and access self-service especially. And I've seen organizations have amazing success with self-service in terms of reducing the load on platform and DevOps teams, because those self-service things just take away that load. And generally the gateway to that is an IDP. So at which point though, it's when it's really going to start adding value. And so I don't think there's like a golden bullet answer to that. Like, is it a day one thing? Probably not. There's probably other things you need to do before you get to that. And often I think, especially like 18 months, 2 years ago, I think there was this view it was going to be like a magic bullet, and you'd put this internal developer portal in front of all of your tools, and then everything would be magically better for developers. And that isn't what happens. Internal developer portals actually take effort to really build out, to populate, to maintain, and you have to factor that into your platform team. And when you can actually deliver that and be able to deliver it reliably to get that value. And don't get me wrong, I love IDPs. I think they are a great, like a great tool. Is it where I would necessarily start though? I'm not sure. And I think sometimes fixing some of the other processes has a much bigger impact. Maybe fixing the deployment process or the automated testing or embedding governance or things that have bigger friction points might be where you want to start, and then move on to that kind of developer portal. You know, it's part of the maturity journey. If you see what I mean, I would say there's places to start, and as you're maturing, developer portal becomes the right thing to have.
Yeah, I also want to add something to this because these are excellent points. You know, when you talk about self-service, I mean, and essentially when you talk about platform engineering, 2, 3 years back, people did see this as a big organization, bet, right? The investment big organizations with thousands of developers were making. But lately, what I've seen is that there is a shift. There is a shift that small companies, startups, and even solopreneurs are adopting platform engineering capabilities, platform engineering in a box, right? If you talk about Microsoft, for example, they are launching this platform in a box. Why it is happening and why it is keeping like traction with the developers is that increasing complexity, AI integration, and also I think streamlining the mundane task or the toil from the development ecosystem. Because as you mentioned, Martin, all that hygiene factors, coding practices, the best practices you can bring for applications and developers, I mean, it is needless to say that you should be having that. Platform engineering is not the first thing you do in the ecosystem, but once you have crossed that journey and you have matured to an organization where you can scale, or you can see that these processes, if you automate, would reduce cognitive load on the developers, that is great. And again, as I mentioned, that even solopreneurs and small companies are using these platform engineering as a box kind of a concept, which is great to see, because this is not only a big company or big organization investment anymore.
Thank you very much. Ran, do you actually,
Yes,
what's your view on
I want
the-
to add for that. So first of all, I want to say that I completely agree with everything Martin and Garima said. I can share that from our experience. Well, we didn't have an a developer platform, a developer portal for a very long time. I mean, you start with building libraries for observability, tent isolations, all the things that you need in the system. Eventually, you start to build blueprints or templates, and then you want to reuse them. So you have, for us, it was Jenkins self-service pipeline that people would use, and it was fine for many years. But then we got feedback that people wanted to build into our services. So we have backend, you have front end, you have other repositories, and everything needs to be in line together. So you have all these complexities. So you need to orchestrate the creation when you create a new service. And then that was the time where we actually added the developer portal, where it basically acts as an orchestrator for the self-service. So it's no longer just a single repository that could live in the Jenkins pipeline. It's now something that orchestrates the creation of multiple pipelines in GitHub and does other things in the background. So it's feedback and complexity, and you can do without developer portal for many years if the need doesn't come.
Thank you, Ran. Stefan, I see that you're muted.
Yeah, no, I also agree with what everybody else said. I think, yeah, the two main points for me are you have to have streamlined processes or golden paths, depending on how you call them, to be able to have a portal. Else it won't bring that much. And I think, as everything else you're doing in the team, you have to think about the life cycle and the maintenance, and not underestimate that this will need maintenance as well.
Thank you. I see that there are no open questions, so I have actually a question myself. I was reading earlier this year an article from Google about how they do platform engineering their size. And one thing that struck me was the message that they said. I think, let me read it because I cannot to make sure that I quote it properly. Tailor platform engineering for each business unit and application to achieve the best outcomes. So when I read it, I felt, well, like, yeah, sure, Google can do that because they have, I don't know how many 100,000 people still working for them, but does it actually work only at the company the size of Google, or do you use the same approach at any scale? I mean, do you try to tailor things for different business units? I don't know, as well, Stefan before mentioned that there are different business units involved usually in a platform engineering. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I would say, oh, so you're muted, Renato, if you're still saying something.
Sorry.
Yes, I would see actually platform engineering more as trying to find what are the where you can find value for different. Are you speaking, Renato?
No, it's okay. It's okay. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I was saying, I think platform engineering, the main point is to try to find where can you provide value to try to find what are common points between business units which you can address centrally to make it more effective. So I think when I read that sentence from Google, it sounds like it's a bit the opposite. I don't know if I understand it correctly.
Yeah,
Maybe I
it's
also want to add something here. I think what you were referring to, Renato, is that, Google has actually distributed autonomy of their platform, right? And they have distributed the autonomy of the platform with specific business unit capabilities. And to the question you had, as Stefan was mentioning, that um, you could do that, right? In any scale. Scale does not matter. Maturity of the organization would matter, because if you have not standardized the process, you do not have the hygiene, the basic hygiene of the development ecosystem itself. You don't have the mature pipelines, like the CI/CD pipelines are flaky, then probably it would not work, right? So you have to have certain level of maturity in the ecosystem before you take that decision. And to be honest, the scale does not matter. If you ask me personally as an R&D leader, I would say you distribute the autonomy as close as possible to the users, because that is the way you could actually gain a lot of efficiencies, as well as work on a specific need of the organization. I'll just cite one more example and finish this point, that what we are seeing with AI, for example, integration of AI into coding and documentation. Every developer has taken things in his or her own hands, right? Is this good for platform engineering? If you think about this, it is a lot of shadow AI in making, and that's what the AI paradox we were referring to in the beginning, right? So we probably have to reach a state of awareness, state of consensus, state of standardization and governance, and then we can distribute the autonomy. And scale do not matter. If it is Google or a startup, I wouldn't say that, it's only for big organizations.
Thank you. I think Martin wanted to say something there. I actually point out
I
that we
was-
manage over half of the panel without mentioning AI. That's in current, I'm quite impressed.
I might mention AI. No, I
No,
I
I'm
was
kidding.
actually going to say something very similar to Grima, but just because, I think that kind of what Google is talking about is really a maturity thing, because I think if you have good standardization and good hygiene, well-governed pipelines, those can then like mature into maybe, multi-dimensional pipelines or flexible templates where you can add things in that are specific to a business unit while keeping the overall governed pipeline in place. So you can certainly adapt that, and honestly, if you have the right governance over those pipelines, as in these things are allowed and these things are not allowed, and you have a way to enforce that, really ultimately you just want to make it easy for the engineers to do the right thing and hard for them to do the wrong thing, because if you do that, they will generally do the right thing, and that plays into the shadow AI type thing too, right? You make it easy for them to do the right thing and hard for them to do the wrong thing.
Thank you, Martin. I have an interesting question from Anthony. How can platform teams enable developer to safely deviate from golden paths? I don't know, Ran, for example, as you mentioned, golden paths before, is how can you deviate from it in a safe way?
Safe way. Wow. Okay. Well, first of all, they should have a very good excuse or justification, and and business requirements to move from the golden path. And it happens. It might be performance, it might be other requirements, right? For example, we use Python. Sometimes we use Golang instead, or even C++. But again, it's about having the justification and about having the proper security and governance mechanisms, so we can help them understand, okay, so we can't support you at this time, but these are the things that you should do, 1, 2, 3, and you should consult with these security architects and these people. So you make sure that you follow the same guidelines, or follow the Python implementation, for example, and do the same for your own technology, your own, if you're using, for example, containers and we're using serverless. So just to guide them as much as possible and make sure that we can have the same governance mechanisms.
Yeah, I think that I think answering specifically to that question as well, one of the things I would say is teams need a way to approach platform teams to be able to say, hey, this is what I want to do, help me do it. So I'm still sticking to all of those guidelines, right? So I think it's less about blocking them and more about providing them a way to actually engage and do that. And I think some of that kind of stuff you can do with what I was talking about just before, by having flexible templates that allow allow places where teams can insert or change things specifically in specific areas in a governed way. But sometimes it is just, hey, I want to submit this new architecture or this change in architecture, or I want to be able to have streaming inside my service, or whatever it is that might not be in those golden paths right now. And then, actually working with the platform team to deliver that as a, hey, this is what we want to do. Here's the reasons why, like Ram was talking about. This is the value that we're going to get from doing this. And then it becomes a conversation on, okay, let's work together to get that in place, because 9 times out of 10, you find that, the golden path that you already have already does 99% of what they need. And essentially you're then creating a version of that path, and it might just then even be an input parameter to that existing golden pipeline, or it might be a new golden pipeline, but it actually contains 90% of the same templates, smaller templates that build that up. Thinking of it kind of like Lego bricks, right? You build out those, and the platform engineering teams have those Lego bricks to build out those pipelines.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Martin.
It's a
and-
very
Was wondering-
interesting question, Renato. I wanted to add one thing here, because if you see the last question we had about, autonomy and democratization, and how do we build some kind of a guardrails which also provides some kind of flexibility to our teams and developers. It's like a balance, right? And the maturity of Google has come into play here. Why they are doing it? Why they are democratizing it? Because they want people to be accountable for their own decisions to a certain extent, right? Making an oversight of the governance and the guardrails. In the longer run, I think we'll have to be very cautious, because all these kind of flexible exceptions build technical debt, right? So there has to be a balance of, how much we can build leverage and let the amplification happen when it comes to like non-standardization and exceptions, or going into a different direction in the namesake of innovation. So there is a balance, right? And I'm not saying that we don't allow the deviation from the golden path, but I think once you understand that where the autonomy relies and how do you distribute or democratize that, I think people will be responsible and accountable to a certain extent.
Thank you very much. I was wondering if it's still the same in the space of regulated industries. I was thinking the banking sector or whatever, if you can still deviate from the golden path in an easy way, or how do you deal in those areas, Stefan?
I think one way to approach this is very often when this occurs, I find that when a team wants to do something differently, in many instances they have a reason, and they have also some skill. So then what you can do is you can actually take ownership about that way to do things. And you can contribute yourself. Then as the platform, you can follow it up so that you know that this kind of issue, that it's not in the scope of the platform, but there is that team that knows how to do it. And so that you can also follow up, that if you can see that the use case comes back several times, then you can start thinking about a contribution model. That's we see your use case, it's actually used very often. So we can now look at integrate it back in the platform. But I think what's important is to follow up these kind of cases, so that to know that when you have this specific use case, there is actually this team, they know it well. So I think with AI, it happens quite a lot at the moment, that we have some teams who are really skilled in AI, and we know that they have specific use cases, and they're actually good at that. And I think in the long term, what shows the maturity of a platform is when these use cases become more commonplace, that you can then bring everything back in the platform in the long term.
Thank you.
Renato,
Martin, you
can
mentioned... Oh,
can I
sure,
add
go ahead,
something?
go ahead.
Yeah. So I completely agree with Stefan. I think that also golden paths, they need to evolve over time. Otherwise, they don't become so much golden path anymore. They become very legacy-like. So I think the contribution model is also very important. I think that it also helps to relieve the pressure from the platform team. So we advocate for an open source model where teams can start, we can say, hey, we can't build this for you right now, but we'd love to have this option in our templates or in our blueprints or whatever. Why don't you build it and you contribute it? And once you contribute it, we'll basically manage it and maintain it. So that's also an option where there's a handover at some point.
Thank you, Ran. I was wondering, Martin, as you mentioned before, making life easier for developer, I was wondering if there's one thing you see really helps developer to move faster without, of course, adding risk and chaos to the development team.
One thing that helps them move faster, I see it as an incremental thing, right? So I don't think there's 100 things that help them move faster. Honestly, if I'm looking at it and I was coming into a new organization and I wanted to be impactful, I'd be looking at the thing that causes them the most friction. Take whatever causes them the most friction and remove it. And when I say remove it, that might be automate it, or, you know, make it self-service somehow if it's something that's like a manual approval or requires a ticket. Like, just make that one hard thing easier for them. And, you know, then, do you know what? The next day they will feel better and their lives will be a little bit easier and they'll have a little bit less stress. And then find the next one, and then find the next one, and then find the next one. And I don't think there's an easy answer that says, hey, you can do this in every organization and it will just make it better for the engineers. You have to at least spend the time to understand what are the biggest friction points for those engineers, and then take that away from them, so that reduces their stress, reduces their cognitive load, you know, makes their life a little bit easier, even if it just, you know, frees up 25-30 minutes of their day by making it, you know, by taking that away. That cascades, and those small changes, you know, that kind of Kaizen approach of, you know, small incremental changes make a big impact. And that is truly what delivering great developer experience looks like. Ultimately, you can have big bad projects, but if you're making those small incremental changes that are making life a little bit better every single day, that's what will have the biggest impact. And that's what will make your, you know, engineers want to stay working where they work. It'll make them, you know, more innovative and probably more invested in the work that they're doing, because they can see the change.
Thank you, Martin.
I think that qualifies as the perfect answer, honestly.
Thank you. Thank you. I see there's a question from the audience. What's the role of platform architect in designing DevOps practice? I don't know who wants to take that one.
Can you repeat the question?
What is the role of platform architects in designing DevOps practices?
Maybe I start and then people should continue, right? I mean, I will start with one statement, which is a follow through of what Martin has said, that, be it platform engineering, be it DevOps, right? Technology itself doesn't solve any problem by itself, right? So it's the people, 70, 20, and 10 rule, right? 70% of all the problems we see around us is, how we interact and how people interactions work in an organization. What is the culture of the organization? So if you think about a platform architect and DevOps practices, I think if you foster that collaboration between these two groups or two segments, I think that would be the first starting point, right? Then 20% of technology. So to try to find out the technology gap, right? So it's the S curve of technology, which is basically where, like, some of the technologies which are maturing as we speak, like we have spoken about AI native software, for example. We also have speaking about multi-cloud environments and all those kind of things, right? So there's a lot of change happening in how we build platforms, right? And what kind of tooling is required there. So this S curve of technology, which is basically some of the technology components are not at scale used by DevOps practitioners. So how do platform engineering architects have the discussions and the communications to say, oh, this is the technology which is mature enough to be put into the platform, and we scale it, and this is a good kind of opportunity to automate the workflow and integrate the workflow, right? So these are the kind of decisions which you can take as a platform architect with your DevOps practitioners or DevOps practices which you have. Another example is CI/CD, for example, right? So what you see in the platform has a lot of data. You have observability, you have a lot of insights into how practitioners are using this platform. So you can actually give that feedback to the DevOps practitioners to say, hey, why don't you use these capabilities, which are it's more insightful from a platform perspective to bring those feedback loops into the DevOps practices.
Thank you very much. As we are now in the last 10 minutes of our roundtable, there's actually a question I want to ask you, all of you. If you can share one example of, I don't know, a paper, a book, a presentation about, of course, today's topic that you think every developer, every attendee of this roundtable should not miss, should take a look. I don't know, Ran, do you want to go first?
Well, okay, but it's a shameless plug though.
Doesn't matter.
So next month at AWS reInvent, I'm actually giving a talk about scaling serverless with platform engineering and how we used blueprints at CyberArk. Basically, I tell our platform engineering journey, what we built, how we build it, and how much now our developers can deliver, how faster they deliver value. So the session number is CNS 361, and I speak with Anton Alexandrov from AWS, and I'm very excited for that.
Thank you, Ran. I think it's going to be anyway available online after the conference.
Yes.
So you don't have to attend it in
yes.
Publicly available for free. So I don't know, Stefan, if you have any suggestion.
There are many things I'm thinking about, but I have in mind. I recently listened to a very interesting presentation in FastFlowConf, which was by Toli Apostolidis. I can share the link afterwards, which was about which was a really good introduction to platform engineering, and also mentions what are the important points to pay attention to when you develop a platform. I can share the link afterwards. Yeah.
Martin, do you have any recommendation?
So it is a specific platform engineering, but honestly, there's a question that we didn't answer around.
Yeah, we'll take that one as well.
Collaboration. But one of my favorite books, and it's helped me multiple times in my career, is the Team Topologies by Matthew Skelton and somebody else. Darn it, I've forgotten the other person's name, but it is just a great book for understanding like cognitive load and how to manage that and like how to pull that together. And then if I'm being very specific around what we're doing here, it's not a book, but I would definitely read the State of DevOps report, the DORA State of DevOps report, right? It really helps you understand where the market is, what the trends are, maybe what good looks like, if that makes sense. So that would be very high on my list, if that makes sense. And just because I'm from Harness, we actually have a book on how to improve your developer experience that you can download for free. So you get 3 from me.
Thank you, Martin. Gary, you're muted.
From platform engineering perspective, there is a very interesting book by Gautam Palappa and Mark. It's from Pact Publishers, so I would highly recommend this. This was published 2-3 months back, so I would definitely recommend that book for platform practitioners.
Thank you so much, Gary. As Martin mentioned, we have still one open question. One is, name few best practices to foster better collaboration between development team, platform DevOps, and operation team, so across teams. I don't know who wants to give some feedback. Martin mentioned it, so if you want to give any suggestion.
I mean, I don't think it's any different for those teams than just fostering better collaboration across any teams. You know, I mean, the reality is that they need to talk to each other, and I would add a whole bunch of other teams into there, right? I saw a talk years and years and years ago at a O'Reilly Velocity conference, which was a very early DevOps conference. And somebody put this slide up that basically had like dev, sec, prod, blah, 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 ops, right? Because the whole point was that you need collaboration across all those teams. You need to be talking to each other, you know, and you need to break down those silos. And the only way to do that is just, you know, by directly engaging and almost by making virtual teams for cross-cutting projects, so those people actually get to know each other, talk to each other, solve problems together, you know, and that goes from everything from the finance team to the security team to the operations team to the infrastructure to the product teams. You know, it needs to be an ongoing conversation, not a I'm making this decision for you.
Thank you, Martin. I see there's David, a very last question right now. Any recommendation on the FinOps perspective? We mentioned, I think Stefan mentioned cost before when he mentioned how to address the topic of cost reduction. I don't know if you have any advice.
One thing I wanted to add to the previous question is I think what's important is to make the purpose, the value, and the challenges of your team as visible as possible so that the others can understand it. And so this could be through metrics, but also what your vision is, what do you want to achieve, things like that. What are you struggling with? The more the others know about that, the better they are going to be able to collaborate with you. And yeah, about the metrics, about TCO ROI. So unfortunately, we don't have the silver bullet yet. We're going in that direction, but I think it's you have to focus on what are on some specific outcomes you want to reach and how you can find the best metrics to measure them.
Thank you so much. I don't know if
Really,
Ran,
okay.
I think you want to.
Yeah, I think it's about, I mean, for us, it's about understanding first where you're bleeding money, so to speak. Like, where do you want to shift your focus? Where do you want to basically investigate where you can reduce the cost? And then you tackle that in a platform way. Okay, so maybe it's a logging configuration. Maybe I'm overspending on some scaling that I'm doing too much. So I can build a blueprint for this kind of unit so it doesn't scale too much, or it knows how to scale down when needed. Or maybe it's logging configurations, maybe it's firewall rules. It can be all sorts of things, but you need to first investigate where you're wasting a lot of money, and then try to investigate and see how you can uniform that and make the best practice and share it through the platform engineering utilities, libraries, blueprints, templates, whatever.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we basically run out of time. So thank you so much for joining us today. I just want to heads up to some QCon and InfoQ events coming up. There's a QCon San Francisco next week for the one in California. There's a QCon, the new QCon AI in New York next month. And for the one based in Europe, there's going to be QCon London next April. Thanks again to all the panelists and our sponsor, Arnes, for today's roundtable. And have an excellent rest of the day. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.